Okay, what are your thoughts on Destiny? And I know that's vague, but like, what are your thoughts on Destiny?
I think Destiny is someone who created the space of Twitch poll and YouTube. Anyone that says that he didn't is kind of full of shit. I think he had a genius idea of getting into politics as a form of entertainment and as a means of streaming and debating, and that it was a brilliant idea, and that he took his professional gaming career and utilized his audience and moved into that space, and that like a lot of people, especially on the left, owe their careers to him. I think he is an entertainer. I don't think he has a very good political philosophy, even for where he sits politically. I think he's a bit of a man child. I think he is um, toxic as fuck. I think that he is degenerate, obviously.
Oh,
That he
true.
engages in creating and farming toxicity and drama as a means of maintaining clout. Because despite the fact that he, in many ways, created the space, a lot of people have surpassed him because they're better at the game than him. But he's still really good at the game. I think he engages in finding what he thinks will be a controversial take, taking that as a position, even if he doesn't necessarily believe in it, and then gaslighting himself into believing it by preparing for debates for it, and that he's fairly talented at it. I think in the last few years, we have seen Destiny's marriage fall apart. He doesn't take care of his kid. We are seeing people lie and cope about the fact that he has an obvious upper, either cocaine or most likely Adderall addiction, and that it's on display constantly. That his jaw movements have, and his eyes and his behavior have radically changed over the last 2 years. And everyone is acting like he had some fucking speech impediment and that's why his jaw moves. And even if that's true, it doesn't explain how his behavior, his facial movements, and his demeanor have changed radically in the last few years. And I think it's sad that we keep putting someone who is falling apart and who has terrible arguments up and up and up, and giving them more and more clout because we enjoy the spectacle of it. And I hope he quits for a few months or something and gets help. There you go. That's my opinion of Destiny.
Wow, that was very thorough. No, I appreciate that. Um, that's interesting. I was just interested in getting your thoughts because I never knew about Destiny, and when I started watching him at some point, I'm like, oh, this guy, he's like a leftist. But then I started watching him and I realized, like, holy shit, this guy's got a lot of good opinions. Now, granted, this was like a couple years ago when I would say Destiny was on his leftist fighting arc or something like that. Like he wasn't really fighting a lot of
Mm-hmm.
right people. And so his arguments were really good and he was like noticing fallacies and stuff. But then like I stopped following him after he said that thing about like Trump and everything, like the assassination and all that stuff. Like I think he had a downward spiral after that moment, which or it could have been a little bit before that moment, which it kept going down
Could
and
be the
down and down.
drugs. It could be Melina leaving him for a fucking twink. Like it could be
Yeah.
fucking,
Confluence of
the
factors.
pressures or the pressure of being, an entertainer. You know what I mean? Like when his wife left him, he should have fucking taken a month off or 2 months off streaming. Instead,
Mm,
he like used it to farm drama. Like
yeah.
that's a person that is addicted to the attention in the game. He has plenty of fucking money to retire. He needed it. That's how he coped with it. And I know, and it's been a very bad way of coping. I just I look, I don't have a lot of respect for Destiny, but I have less respect for people that like see him fucking falling apart and like not, and pretending like that's not happening, or just like enjoying farming clout off of him by like, responding to every one of his insane Twitter posts and like, trying to have some battle, trying to get farm some engagement. And I understand it's a game. It's a game I play poorly, right? Like, if I was better at the game, I'd have a lot more viewers and a lot more money. I'm not that good at the game.
Yeah.
Um, but nevertheless, it's I don't know. It saddens me to a certain degree. I'm the worst fucking ANCAP and objectivists or whatever in certain domains, because I still have still have those driving factors of my overly emotional old leftist self, I guess.
Okay. Yeah, I used to respect him, but yeah, that's gone now. Until he makes his return, hopefully one day. I don't know, we'll find out. But this
I don't think he was ever respectable, man. I think he was he was good at playing the game, right? And now that
yeah,
he's less good at playing the game, or he's just leaned into playing the game. You know what I mean? Like he's lost some of the veneer of respectability
I think I
because
just
he's
caught him
more
at
interested in playing the game well.
I caught him at a time when his arguments were a lot better. That's what I'll say. And I have learned a lot from him.
He's always had good arguments. He's bad at philosophy, but he's always been good at debating. Anybody that thinks that he wasn't is coping, right? Like Destiny has been good at rhetoric in the online space for years, right? For years, he's been great at it. I think when you caught him was when,
it's like
I think there was a
4 years
point of
ago.
period,
I don't know.
right? Like this is the time period where multiple people that he has made, right? Like Hassan, for example, right? Like Hassan, obviously he was on the Young Turks. Obviously he has family connections. Like his dad being a billionaire and his mom being,
His dad's a
real estate
billionaire?
investor.
He's just got a shit
He's a
ton of money.
billionaire in Turkey.
Holy.
He's a billionaire in Turkey. And his mom is like a also like another, or maybe a millionaire. I meant to say millionaire, not billionaire.
Still not.
Okay. But like it might as well be a billionaire in Turkey compared to our wealth here. He's one of the richest people in Turkey. And his mom's a big real estate, guru or investment real estate. His brother works for Boeing, right? Like in like in like an international means, right? Like he is the fucking like he's part of the fucking swamp. But nevertheless, like he still owes a fuck ton of his audience and online career to Destiny. And the same thing happened to Vosh, right? Like he created several people, and then those people started getting bigger than him. So like he's playing the game, right? So he's like, I'm gonna cannibalize their audience. I'm gonna showcase how Vosh is an idiot and how Hassan are idiots. I'm gonna go against the left, right? He's not doing it because he has some genuine like philosophical or political disagreement with these people. He's doing it because it's part of the game. He's always been a cynical entertainer who's and a bullshitter.
That's fair. Fair enough. This question I'm really interested in hearing your answer on, because the war in Israel versus Palestine, that has been something that has been extremely divisive to libertarians, and I can't, for the love of God, like understand why it's been so decisive. As far as I'm concerned, libertarians all believe in the NAP, and so this should be a simple answer. The question is, who homesteaded first and who's defending the property? Now, I realize that the war has been going on for hundreds of years, but it just appears to me that this is something that libertarians shouldn't be divided on if we know historically who got the land first and who's defending it. So what is your opinion on that issue? And we're not going to get banned if we talk about this, right?
No, we'll be fine. I know how to stay in the TOS. I literally let juice burgers in my chat, right? You know what I mean? Like it's fine. Like YouTube doesn't care unless you're really large or you piss off certain people.
Okay,
right?
true.
And so long as you moderate chat, you don't say crazy shit, you'll be fine. So first and foremost, what I will say about this is you should interview Casimir.
Okay.
You should reach out to Casimir, schedule an interview, and have him go through his whole arguments. I think he gives great arguments. I disagree with some of them. But if you want to know someone that's very knowledgeable on the history of, this nation state of Israel, right? Casimir is great, right? He lived in Israel for many years. He is an ANCAP through and through. If you want the libertarian perspective from a genuine anarcho-capitalist, he's great on this. So that's what I'll say first and foremost. Second of all, 1,000-foot bird's eye view. My big contention with the Israel-Palestine position is that you have people that are sophists pretending to be based in libertarian thought, but are libertarians in name only. And one of whom is Oh God, now I can't think of his name. The antiwar.com guy. Why can I not think of his name? One of the founders of the Libertarian Institute. Um,
Not
oh my
Walter
God.
Block, right?
No.
Okay. Because the two big ones for me that totally surprised me were one, Dave Smith, and number two,
Dave Smith is one of his people.
Do you know Saifuddin Amos?
The name sounds familiar, but I don't know.
He's like the the godfather of understanding how Bitcoin works.
Oh my God, what is the guy's? Someone in chat help me out. I can't think of the fucking name. Scott Horton. Thank you. Jesus Christ. So you have people like Scott Horton and all of the people who kind of just absorb his arguments, right? So like Dave Smith, Clint Russell. You have a whole bunch of people that are like that are just kind of taking his arguments and then utilizing them as the libertarian argument. And I have a huge problem with this because very little, if anything, that Scott Horton says is from a libertarian lens. It's all from an anti-war lens. And it is from, he regurgitates half truths, right? And one of the, you can see this because they'll use the same phrases. And these are narratives that have been pushed by the left for a while, right? So understanding like the PLO has existed in tandem with leftist organizations and activist organizations for a long time, right? The plight of the Palestinians is a serious issue that needs resolving for sure. But they are the oppressed next to the oppressor, which is a Western liberal democracy that is, capitalist in nature in the region. And so there is a large vested interest from left-wing academia and institutions to have an anti-Western hegemonic, capitalist belief system, right? And in this instance, to a certain degree, we as libertarians kind of align because we don't like nation states, and we certainly don't like nation states that violate property rights. And Israel is kind of one of the worst at it. Maybe not the worst in the sense that there are dictatorships and shit, but like in a place that presumes to value capitalism and private property rights, they do all kinds of shit, like in the Golan Heights and things of that nature. The problem is there's all of these half truths. None of the libertarians talk about, certain elements. They talk about the things that the left stresses, and often they're true. So one example is, you'll hear Dave Smith, you'll hear Clint Russell, you hear all of these people use the same phrase that Scott Horton uses without ever actually investigating the claim, which is they say, the 6-Day War is, a war of aggression. What? What do you mean it's a war of aggression? Where is that term coming from? Well, that term is coming from left-wing narratives and propaganda. It's like, they're like, Israel started that war bombing Egypt. Egypt and Jordan were amassing troops on Israel's border. And then Israel went and destroyed an airfield where they were amassing things for an invasion into Israel. Now, this war was started over the Suez Canal. And what occurred was that Egypt took over the Suez Canal and restricted trade over what was already UN negotiated free trade area so that they could have access to goods, services, goods and resources. Israel didn't bomb them then. They went to the UN. The UN sent in peacekeeping forces and negotiators, and Egypt refused to play ball. And then the UN left. So it wasn't, Israel didn't attack until they had already had their means of trade where they had treaties and recognition to be able to trade cut off, whilst these other nations were trying to starve them and keep them from being able to get goods and resources. And then still didn't attack, went to the UN, still didn't attack, and when the UN left, they didn't attack until Egypt and Jordan started amassing troops at their border. And Dave Smith and Scott Horton and Clint Russell and all these libertarians are like, this is a war of aggression by Israel. What the fuck are you talking about? right? Like these are all things that are, other than the fact that the nation state of Israel should dissolve itself and allow anarchism to take root, it's about as non-aggressive an action as Israel could possibly take. They talk about the Nakba, which is horrible, right? The Nakba is horrible. The fact that once Jews, once Israel got sections of, of their land kind of like officially declared in 48, they kick off all of the Muslims in all these different regions, and force them out of their own property. Horrible, horrible. I agree that we should talk about it. But the idea that you talk about that and you don't talk about the 20 years of riots that Muslims were doing and multiple different times that individuals in that area were randomly attacking people and where they organized fucking terrorist attacks on people over and over and over again, and that the people in those regions were financially supporting them and housing them. The fact that you never have that conversation is fucking wild. The fact that when we talk about solutions, people like Dave Smith and the usual players again are not talking about private property rights. They're not talking about homesteading principles. They're not talking about returning specific lands, etc. They're all talking about two-state solution. They're all talking about the same statist left-wing narratives and solutions as well. All of these things are they're not the libertarian lens. They're not how a libertarian should look at these things. And so, there is a civil war within the Libertarian Party about Israel Palestine. And part of it is because, let's be honest, libertarianism has a lot of Jews in it. And, it's because it's, a kind of autistic, high IQ ideology that, had a lot of Jews as its founders, is a part of reason. And a lot of these Jews are like, what the fuck are you talking about? And then, of course, with that also comes a lot of Jews that claim to be libertarian, but it turns out that Zionism, and in their Jewish identity seems to be a value they hold over their libertarian values, and then it turns out many of them aren't fucking libertarians at all. And examples of that would be one of the oh my god, what's his name? I interviewed him, literally fucking Ayn Rand Institute guy, not Leonard Peikoff, but the other one. Regardless, he's one, as well as Walter Block, right? Like there are people that have wildly aggressive, bomb-hungry opinions, that I think are very anti-libertarian, and their arguments and justifications for them aren't very good. And so that is kind of my take on the Israeli-Palestinian civil war conflict within the libertarian space, is that there's almost no one talking about this issue from a libertarian perspective. Instead, you have a bunch of paleo libs regurgitating leftist bullshit narratives, and then you have some crazy Jewish libertarians, Yaron Brook, thank you, just kind of spouting their own version of aggressive non-libertarian nonsense. I think it's done a good job of illuminating which people are more concerned with being popular and being part of public conversations, and and which of those are more concerned with spreading libertarian philosophy and ideas. So there you go.
Okay, so TLDR, basically it's complicated. But it's not that like any one person is right, but it's kind of a thing of like, and I've heard like this idea of like, property being abandoned and like people homesteading property, and it's like how long is too long for property to be abandoned, stuff like that. But there's been a lot of attacks on Israel, and like I heard like they've been shooting like missiles into the Iron Dome for like 20 years or something. I don't know how true that is, but
oh yeah, I mean, again, like there's a lot to it. You know what I mean? Like Casimir would be great to talk about. There's so many myths, truths, and misinformation that's being spouted by everybody. And it's a complicated thing. I mean,
yeah,
it's also, I mean, like you look at Lebanon, right? You know what I mean? The PLO get kicked out of Israel. They go to Jordan. They try and assassinate the fucking, monarchy in Jordan. They get kicked out of Jordan. They go move into Lebanon, and then they take a hotbed of problems there and start Black September and try and kill all the whites and Christians in Lebanon and start a civil war there. And then somehow Israel's the bad guy when they show up later and secure regions that are close to them and try and, get involved in that. It's like this is a region where everyone around them are Muslim fanatics that whenever they get a majority in a government or get enough power, they don't use that to build. They use that to try and kill the Jews. And it's like, how do you deal with that situation? And the answer is complex. But if you're not even going to talk about it in regards to libertarian principles, you're just going to talk about it in this like oppressed oppressor dynamic and fucking only tell half of the story and regurgitate narratives that like support your story but not actually discuss how complicated it actually is, then you lose your libertarian chops as far as I'm concerned, right? Like you're either grifting or you're just or worse, maybe even worse, you don't fucking know because you never bothered to actually research it. You just watched some Scott Horton videos and read some Wikipedia articles just like Destiny did. And now you're ready to go out with your talking points on Piers Morgan instead of actually fucking engaging with it and thinking about it from the ideology you presume to fucking uphold.
Fair enough. I mean, it's a complicated topic. That's why I'm partially afraid of approaching it because there's just so much stuff to know. There's so much history to know. And then there's so much misinformation around it, like real misinformation because everybody has different interest groups and it's a foreign land. I mean,
yeah, absolutely. Like one of the ones that Casimir talks about often, right? Is like when you look there's these maps that they show you of like Israel growing and shit. And they're like, look at all of this land that was Palestine. And then Israel comes in and all this land is theirs now. And like what they don't show is that like no one was living in like 90% of that land.
It's just neutral territory.
It's like swampland and or like deserts. And like when the Jews first settled there, like there were areas that were completely abandoned that they then like irrigated and like set up farmland, and then Palestinians moved there and like their quality of life and their finances and everything improved by moving to where the Jews were to work as employees on land they were homesteading. And then they like build land there and they're like, that was Palestinian land before. And now it's, like there's so much bullshit that goes on in that. And of course, there's a lot of fucking evil shit that the state of Israel has done as well, right? Like Likud is not fucking an innocent baby boy in this. I mean, for Christ's sake, it wasn't until 2012 was when they finally recognized that it should be illegal to use human shields. It was a case of them strapping a child to a car so that the Gaza people in Gaza wouldn't shoot at the car. Like, there are no good guys there.
Yeah. No, that's fair. Yeah, I was just interested in getting some clarity on that issue because it's been a rough one. But this one I'm also really
no, where'd it go? Go ahead.
This might be the last question unless I think of anything else because I mean,
fair enough.
Dude, I've been wanting to talk to you for so fucking long. You don't even know. So
No, you were DMing me and I was being a dick about it. Like I just had different shit keep coming up.
I understand stuff happens, stuff comes up. But yeah, I've had a lot of questions building up because I wanted to ask you so much stuff, and I thought it was the perfect opportunity. But this question is about Jordan Peterson. Now, to preamble this, Jordan Peterson was very influential in my life, and I grew up with him in, I would say, his golden age when he was doing all his talks and stuff. And a lot of the stuff he said was pretty damn influential in my life, and a lot of it resonated very much with me. But I have noticed that it does seem like he's probably coming out of that gold age, and ever since joining the Daily Wire, his thoughts and everything have been more constrained and I don't know, like less evocative. So I'm just curious what your overall thoughts, your honest overall thoughts of Jordan Peterson are. So I don't want you to be like, oh, since I like him, you have to like him. No, I want to know your honest thoughts on him.
Have you listened to me at all?
I know, bro. I'm just
I burn all the bridges. That's who I am,
True.
right? Like
You do.
truth above all else. I burn a lot of bridges,
Like
and
with that
it's
music
hurt me.
video?
You know what I mean?
Like with that music video?
What are you talking about?
The guy, the guy who made the music video and you were fucking roasting the shit out of him.
I mean, come on, dude. It was worth. It was. You know what I mean? Like it is what it is. But yeah, no.
Yeah.
If you want my opinion, you're always going to get my honest opinion, unless
Great.
that is like a
Great.
TOS
Let's hear
violation.
it.
Even
TOS
then, I'll
violation.
dance around. So yeah, Jordan Peterson. Yeah, no, I think Jordan Peterson was amazing. I think everyone should watch his some of his online courses from when he was at the university in Canada. I think they're great. I think Maps of Meaning is a magnum opus worthy of great intellectual thought. I think 12 rules to 12 rules to
For
what is it?
life.
12 rules to live your life or whatever.
12 rules
12
for
rules
life.
whatever. Those books suck. Right? Like I mean like they're for normies, right? They're not for anybody that isn't like engaged in deep thought. But like Maps of Meaning is great. It's amazing. I would suggest that you maybe read Eric Neumann's Origins of Consciousness first, so that you have a good foundation of Jungian philosophy and psychology, before engaging in Maps of Meaning, because I think Maps of Meaning is a rough place to start if you haven't understood Jungian psychology, and there's no real reason to um, read all of Jung when you can just read Eric Neumann, his understudies, Origins and History of Consciousness, or whatever. Specifically the first half, because like the second half is about psychotherapy. So like you can kind of ignore that portion because it's all outdated anyways. So I mean it's an interesting read if you're into reading about if you're into reading about like, old 1960s, 50s fucking psychotherapy techniques and psychoanalysis. But yeah, so all of that is good, right? I think Jordan Peterson was great when he was personally affected by the political positions. I think he was a great voice of reason in Bill can't do the job, despite the fact that they graduated with a 4.0 with a college degree. So instead, they're like, yeah, sure, college degree helps, but like let me do these online tests and see how good you are at them.
That makes me interested in IQ. I want to ask you really quickly because I don't know. I haven't done the research about
Yeah.
IQ, but the thing about IQ, I never understood. First of all, I don't fully understand what IQ is exactly, but in my opinion,
Intelligence quotient.
right. But like, here's the thing: there's like different when we're talking about intelligence. I don't know exactly what the purpose of intelligence is because I know that there's people who are physically fit. I know that there are people who are healthy. There's people who are socially gifted. There are people who are charismatic. There are people who are, negotiators. There's all kinds of people who are good at different things. But what is intelligence exactly? And is it different from problem solving, which I consider to be like the most important part of success in someone's life is understanding problem solving. Like that seems to be the best skill to have. But
Yeah,
like,
let's
what is
let's
IQ
let's talk about
exactly?
it for a little bit. Okay, so first and foremost, IQ is probably the best. People that say that IQ tests are like racist or bad or whatever, don't listen to them. Just tell them to shut the fuck up. They don't know what they're talking about. It is the best metric that has ever been created in psychology, right? It is highly predictable. IQ combined with personality trait conscientiousness, um, are the two largest factors in whether or not a person achieves financial and emotional success in their life, right? Um, IQ is number one. Personality trait conscientiousness is very close to it, and that makes up like 60+% of the equation of whether or not you succeed in life. Um, Now G factor is what we call like general intelligence, right? And intellect IQ or intellectual quotient or intellect quotient, there's a couple different ways of saying it. Um, is as close a metric as we can get to G factor, right? They're highly correlated, but not necessarily one to one, right? So, what intelligence, you can get an IQ test online or something, but they're all bullshit. A real IQ test needs to be done by a licensed psychotherapist that is trained in the test that they purchased, right? So there are a couple different companies that make IQ tests, right? And if depending upon your state, you either need to be a psychiatrist or a psychologist. Some states you can be a counselor, right? Just depends on the state. And then you need to go and you need to train and get licensed in the test that you're purchasing. Okay. So it's very heavily controlled by the companies that make the test, that you know how to properly conduct the test. And then the test takes like 2 or 3 days of that you want to do it at different times, but you also want to make sure that you're doing it when the person isn't hungry or that there aren't any other issues involved, right? And what IQ is generally designed to test is there is some correlation with knowledge, but a real test is doing the best that it can to eliminate the correlation of knowledge to IQ score. The goal is not to test your knowledge. The goal is to test your ability to think and your ability to grasp concepts, your ability to recognize patterns, your ability to retain knowledge, such as memories, right? So, for example, pattern recognition, they'll give you some blocks and then they'll give you a black image and say, like, make this image with these blocks. So you have to figure out how to put the blocks together so that the two-dimensional black image that you see when you see the blocks is the same in a bird's eye view, and you
I know
used
what
all
you're
the
talking
blocks.
about. I know exactly what you're talking about.
Right. Or they'll do something like they'll be like, hey, um, here's some numbers. 498. Give them to me backwards. Okay, here's some numbers. 498765521. Give them to me backwards and skip and go every other number, starting with one. They do shit like that, right? So they're testing your ability to retain and hold, like, because like the average person can only hold 6 digits in their head easily. Okay, unless they engage in grouping. That's why telephone numbers have 3 digit area code and then a 3 digit number and then a 4 digit number, because it's easier for you to remember dot, 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 dot than it is to just remember 7 numbers in a string. Most people can't remember 7 numbers in a string unless they repeat it over and over and over and over again. But they can very easily remember a phone number because they're grouped in a number of 4 and grouped in a number of 3, and it's only one above the average amount of numbers a person can hold in their head, right? So that's kind of how an IQ is tested, and it's designed to test your ability to think and get as close as they can to G factor, whilst um, whilst trying to eliminate knowledge to the best of their ability. Because what they don't want to do is measure education level and measure vocab. Now they do use vocab and things like that in those tests, but they do it at like an age appropriate thing, and those tests are more designed for you to see what your vocab is in your domain, but they're not so much testing what words you know, but they're testing your ability to grab words that you don't know and figure out their meaning in sentences and paragraphs, because the context clues are there if you know the rest of the words, right? So like, yeah, they do use vocab and things like that, but they're not weighted as highly as other domains of the test. They're trying to average things, and then they're trying to see outliers, etc. And then when you go through this full process, that's kind of when you get an IQ. It was originally designed by Alfred Binet, who was a French like psychologist that was working with the French government to try and identify mentally challenged children at a young age so that they could quickly intervene and give them special education, and get them to hopefully catch up with their classmates so that you wouldn't have people that would fall behind. So it was originally designed for children, and to identify those that were lower IQ, and then it kind of sprang forth from there. So that's kind of what IQ is trying to do.
Hmm. Innovation saves the day again. That's really interesting. I never knew that. Um,
Someone said in chat, the ASVAB is an excellent IQ test. The ASVAB is an okay IQ test. It gets better once you apply the oh god, what is the secondary test? There's two scores when you get an ASVAB, right? You get a score from like 30 to 99, and then there's another one. It's like G something, and it's testing like your knowledge of tools, your knowledge of other things, and it gets a little bit more accurate when you use the second one, not just the ASVAB score, but the other portion of the test. But even still, the ASVAB is like not that great of a test in terms of IQ. It's just like there no online test you do, no sit down one day and answer these questions test that you do is gonna do a great job of eliminating knowledge versus eliminating your ability to learn, right? Like it's in order to really get an accurate IQ, you have to have a professional, you have to sit down and you have to go through tests where they observe because when you're trained to do these tests, there are things that you don't even know you're being tested on. So you think you're being tested on your ability to memorize something, right? But you're actually being tested on your ability to move to the next question rapidly, as so that we can test your level of strain that the question put on you and your ability to maintain focus and move on to the next question. Or like where you think you're being tested on like how long it takes you to make a pattern, but really you're being tested on how many attempts that you took in building things to make the pattern, as opposed to how long it took you. Because a high IQ person will sit and conceptualize the patterns and how the patterns fit together, as opposed to just randomly grabbing shit and trying to fit it together. And these are two different forms of intelligence and problem solving, and we want to test both.
That's crazy.
Like that.
It's crazy. One sounds like deductive reasoning, and the other one sounds like inductive reasoning. I don't know. Sounds interesting.
But yeah, there you go. There's the IQ spiel. I know a lot about IQ. Something I studied in
you know a lot
school.
about a lot of stuff.
I mean, I appreciate that. But nevertheless, like I know IQ is one of those things I know a lot about. Like it's one of those things that like I've in-depth read multiple books and in-depth read most of the relevant landmark literature and like
Bro, you read multiple
done,
books
like,
on
Klein's
IQ. That's
University.
crazy. That's crazy.
I went to grad school to be a counselor. You know what I mean? Like that's kind of my actual area of expertise.
That's crazy.
Also, I don't read that much. I listen to audiobooks, right? But like I go through a minimum of 2 books a month. Like, and
Whew.
I don't listen to a lot of like fantasy. I sometimes every 2 or 3 books I'll take a break and I'll listen to a fantasy book or read a fantasy book. But yeah, I mean I probably read like 30 books a year at a minimum. And that's like me casually now, much less when I was in school. I was a voracious reader.
That's great. That's awesome, dude.
Have I taken a Mensa test? I have. I don't talk about my IQ and my scores and things like that online. It's just not something I want out there. It's not something that I want like. It's not something that I want like people. Oh, you said blah, blah, blah. Like I don't need that being a thing out in the public domain. Sorry.
That's fair. That's fair.
I know what it is. It's high. Come at me, bro. I don't.
I think we can all assume that's true. But yeah, Scott, bro, this was a crazy good conversation. I've been, like I said before, I've been wanting to talk to you for a while, and I was really glad when I was able to finally talk to you. But yeah, it was really cool to talk about metaethics, and then normative theories, and then libertarian NAP. All really good stuff. You're an egoist now, so that's cool. But you don't have to use the title.
You
it's okay,
defined
bro.
egoism as
cool.
Do you believe in the theory of human action? Okay, now you're an egoist. Like I'm not. Don't label me with that shit. I don't need people coming at me thinking I'm like some fucking sociopath.
Yeah, true. No, that's fair. That's fair. But
yeah,
right, no.
I will. I'll see you around. I'll see you in Discord. I'll see you, in chat or whatever, or talk to you around and. DM me if you want to have a conversation about the red pill and we can.
Yeah, we're gonna talk about the red pill. That's
really
what we're gonna do.
Conversation.
Fucking loved it, man.